Hello, beautiful souls. Today I am here to respond to a question that a listener put in one of the comments because I had invited people to ask for clarification on anything that they were wondering about in my last video. And someone had written, I'm paraphrasing here, how do we stop ourselves from moving into a negative mindset which can perpetuate what we're seeing when there is so much harm and hardship in the world? And then I'm going to bring through the guides and see what they want to offer to this as well. So basically, this person is learning, it seems, things that have been happening behind the scenes in the world that are really very harmful, you could say, and destructive. And of course, for many people, once we learn these things, it's really hard to stay in a place of neutrality and not have judgment, which I talked about in my last video, when we know that all this stuff is happening in the world. And I feel it's coming forward more and more, especially if you look for alternative sources of information than what most people have coming through their screens. And so I wanted to respond to this because I offered out the invitation, and I think it's just a good follow-up to the last video and creating more understanding around this. And then, as I said, I will invite the source that flows through me to come in as well and just add more to this. So the way I would like to start this is to say that it is duality that tells us something is right or wrong, good or bad. It's that 3D world that we've been living in that really is a duality experience. And so there's always two sides to everything. And I talked in the last video, even when we think things are good, that is still a judgment. Because one day if something is good, this duality world always has to find balance. So you may have noticed if you ever have a day and you're on a high and everything's just fabulous, and then 2 days later it crashes and you're like, what the heck happened? It's because there always has to be balance. So even though we're in this duality world, if we're going good and bad, it finds a balance somewhere, and that balance is kind of more about that unity. And so as long as we're judging something right or wrong or good or bad, we're out of balance. And what that does, the judgment does, is it creates emotion. If something we see as good, we get on that high. We have a really great day and we're flying high. That's emotion that's creating that. And if we see something as negative and evil and bad, we bring up emotion about that as well. So that judgment is actually coming from the emotion. We see an event, and the event doesn't mean anything until we begin to make associations to decide what it means. So, as I mentioned before, people can be at the same event and everybody walks away with a different experience because our experiences are based on our emotions, which are based on our past experiences. So this is going deep into the psyche in the response to this. So it's the beginning step is to understand that when we see that and we think it's so awful and so cruel, it's important to know that what I'm saying doesn't mean that we accept these things in the world. It's different from that. It's a place we need to get to. We need to be able to detach from it before we can find balance of what everything is about. And so when we think that an event happens regardless of what we think of them, and the more we engage, the more we're feeding the energy of what we judge, then we can begin to see how this works. So we see it, we have a judgment, we have this emotional reaction which brings up the judgment. And then we need to be aware of that to start with. that the judgment is an emotional reaction. So, understanding that, it's also important to know that these events are out there regardless of how we judge them. There are some people who, I would say, you could say, are not coming from a love source that may like seeing these things, or people who are so wounded that they feed off what we could call negative events because their wounds are so deep, they're disconnected from the love. For them, they're having a totally different experience. So the events are happening out there regardless of what we think of them. Just checking my notes so I stay on track here. The more we engage, the more we're feeding the energy of what we love. Or what we're seeing, what we judge. So we see something, we have an emotional reaction, our emotions have us say, oh my goodness, that's so awful. How could anybody do this? This is horrific. Nobody should be living through this. Nobody should have to experience this. And we get riled up in our emotions, and it builds and it grows and it creates a frequency. And that frequency is actually feeding the event that is happening. The event that we would rather not see in the world. What many people don't realize is that as we build up in these emotions, we are feeding the frequency of the thing that we would like to see cease in this world. And so this is a big awareness as well, that we want to get to this place of neutrality, not because we accept it, but because we're no longer feeding into it and perpetuating it. If everyone in the world completely disengaged or didn't have an emotional response to something evil happening in the world, it would simply stop because there wouldn't be anything there that's feeding it. And particularly, things that we would call evil feed off emotional energy. So when we stop judging, there's no energy to feed that negative event. And when we stop judging, we will see that even what we call positive, happy events in the world will shift for us. It will be more of a neutral state of being in that experience. It feels great to be happy, and it's not to say we won't be happy, but it won't be the big highs and lows. It'll be more balanced. And so then the question is, so if we stop judging, we're going to stop feeding the energy of this thing that we are seeing as evil. How do we stop the judging? And that is why it's so important to know our foundation, know what's going on in the inside. The way we stop judging is to, the moment a judgment comes up and then we feel that emotion coming up, it is to explore, where is that emotion coming from? Okay, first of all, what am I believing to have this emotion? I'm believing that this is evil and this is bad. Where have I had what I judge as evil or bad happen in my life? What are my feelings around that, about what has happened in my life? How can I come to harmony and acceptance about the things that have happened in my life so that I am no longer having the emotional response to it? And that is a lot of what my work is about. And I'm always talking about things I'm going to do. It takes me a while to accomplish these things, but I am going to start bringing through more light language that you can buy as audios or donate, whatever I decide to do, to support people in moving through these places of difficulty, we could say. So it is to get in touch with the foundation of the emotion that's coming up that is judging this. And an example of this, is people who carry a victim mentality. They're going to judge anyone who's getting hurt in any way. because they want to rescue the victim. The only reason they want to rescue the victim is because somewhere they also believe that they are a victim and they would like to be rescued. If you don't carry any victimhood, any victim mentality, you don't see others as victims. You see them as empowered. You get to the point where you see everybody as empowered. And when you get to that point, then you're not in the emotional state, because nobody needs to be rescued. They are making their own choices. They're on their own life path. And again, this is not to be without compassion. Let's put it into the moment. Compassion in the moment. If I'm walking down the street and I see somebody kicking their dog, I'm going to say, hey, that's not right. Or if I see somebody being harmed, I'm going to interfere. One time when I was a child, I used to pick strawberries in the summertime. I was 12. And we went on to the strawberry field one day, my sister, myself, and our two girlfriends, and they had a younger brother. And the owner's German Shepherd jumped up on this little boy. I don't know, he might have been 9 or 10, 9 probably, and started attacking him on the back of his head. And we were all just kind of standing there in shock. And then suddenly I just ran over and started beating the dog with my lunch bag. It just spontaneously came out of me. So that's, I'm not saying that you stand back and watch these things happen because you don't have an emotional connection. We still have compassion and we still respond in the moment. But a lot of what we're doing these days is responding in our mind. We're not in the moment, so it doesn't require that same kind of response. It requires us to go in and see where that response is coming from. So I'm going to bring through the guidance right now that wants to move through to bring more clarity around this, and see as well if there's time for some light language after this. Indeed, beloveds, it is our great joy and delight to be before you and to acknowledge that this one has spoken very wisely around what this process is. Many people want to jump from a state of judgment completely over into being in a state of non-judgment and having accomplished that without all the steps that happen in between to get you there. And we want to say that many people will hear these words but not want to take the time to do the inner work to, for one thing, know what the emotions are that come up, and then to explore them, and then to find a way to progress through them. And so the first thing to know is that it does require the inner work. You are not going to change if you don't do something to bring about change. You are not going to have a deeper awareness if you're still responding from your former awareness and not doing anything to get yourself deeper. And this is part of what has held many people back in their personal evolution, is that they stop questioning who they are. They stop looking for where the responses are coming from and just feel that their responses are valid based on the external experience. But really, your external experience is based on your responses. So if you want your external experience to change, if you want to have more peace in the world, in your inner world, regardless of what is happening in the outer world, then you need to explore within yourself what feels out of harmony, what cannot find that stillness, that grace that you call peace. And as was spoken, when you change that inner world, your external world changes. You can simply walk through it like a leaf floating down a river. It doesn't judge and tell the river it has to go left around this rock when the natural way of the stream is to move right around that rock. The leaf doesn't put out any judgment. It's simply there, moving through time and space, having an experience. And this is how you can be. And when you're in the still waters and it's a beautiful day and you're floating along, It feels great. And when you're in the rapids, you get bounced around a bit, but you know that the water's always going to catch you. That's the thing. When you get to this place of stillness, you know that it's all going to work out according to the way that life is flowing through you and what wants to flow through you. And that is, in many ways, according to what you do in every moment and the way you use your rudder to steer the experiences that you're having. So this would be our only extension to what has been spoken, is to say that it truly is through doing this internal work that you find your way. And this one has many techniques of supporting people in that, should you choose to use her work, or to find others who can support you. Find new methods that can take you very quickly to the place of discovering, or simply give yourself time for contemplation. Begin to notice. This is the first step. Every time you have a judgment, first of all, it requires an awareness to know that you just had a judgment. And then when you have that awareness, oh, I'm judging this event. I'm feeling emotions coming up. What are the emotions about? What am I really feeling? I'm feeling anger. Oh, okay. Where is this anger coming from? Oh, yeah, I'm feeling like it's really mean and cruel that anybody should have to go through this. Why do I have this reaction to things that are mean and cruel? Perhaps I feel like I've endured things that were mean and cruel. And what does that mean to me? And then just keep going in and contemplating and exploring. And the more you do this, the more the resolution and the answers are going to bubble up to the surface for you, because you've taken time to go into the subconscious. You've knocked on the door and opened it a crack and said, okay, I'm willing to see. And so then that invitation is there. The door stays open so that these aspects of you begin to come into your awareness, and you begin to develop a deeper sense of who you are in the hidden realm of the subconscious. And this is how you move into this place of letting go of the old paradigm, which is that duality judgment response, so that you are able to live in the understanding of what it is to live in the new paradigm frequencies that are here, if you can allow yourself to disengage from the past and step into those newer frequencies that do not carry judgment in that way. So it requires, especially in this time, as you are transitioning, from one era into another, doesn't it make sense that huge shifts have to happen within the psyche? Because huge shifts are happening in this paradigm of moving from one era on earth into another. You are so programmed in your old paradigm that it really takes a lot of internal awareness to see who you were and where that keeps you from stepping into the truth and the magnificence of who you are without all the filters of the 3D experience. They are filters that have been placed over your pure light within you. And they've been there for so long that people can say, well, that's just who I am. Well, it certainly seems like it's who you are because it's what you've been living for so long. But there's a deeper truth of you underneath, a very pure truth that doesn't have these emotional connections and responses. With that, we will leave it and ask this one to bring through some light language to support people in moving into this process of the internal exploration and really begin to question all your responses. As this one said last week, she even began to question Why do I want to go visit this person? Why do I want to go explore this town? Why do I want to get out of Dodge and go somewhere else? Just explore it. Is it coming from an inspired place of creation? Fine. But be very aware. It can feel like that when it's really a desire to escape something that's happening in your day, in your moment, that you don't really want to look at. Well, those are the things that are most important to look at. So this is the invitation here. And this is what the light language can respond to for you in this moment. Okay. Okay, so we'll bring that through now. Hishkana a mishka atwa e ishkanayo tiktaka atwa ishkana matnawa a. Machikwa he ishkana iktaka atwa ishkana matwa na. Ashkialawa e ishkanayo tiktaka ha mishkana. Machikwa e aktaka hi ashkana. Makalawa e ishkanayo tikcha nikna. Mache akwa I ishkanayo tiktaka hashkini ashkana matnawa a. Yalawai chiana. Machikihai no. Iani ashkinian way on Yanayamanai no and Ayanani no. Ishkana atma I ishknaya chi ashkana yashkana achwa e ashanitaka atwa e ashkana. Just allowing these new energies to anchor in for a moment. This new frequency that they just dropped in here. Hiashkani atma ashkani ashkana ashkana. Hishkanatwa e ishkanaya chi ashkana miyachna a. Machki atwa ashkani ashkana atma natki ashkana ashkana ashkana. Hachki ashkana iktaka ashki kana ashkana a. Shoo, shoo. I'm feeling a total shift in my cells. Just holding this space for a moment. Smiling. Because I see us all as light. They just really anchored us in as beautiful light. The light language can happen so quickly. They really took us from a place of bewilderment and not knowing into just firmly centered and anchored into our pure radiance. And at the end, this energy is still running through me as it's shifting. At the end, I saw each of us just smiling, knowing our radiance, knowing all that we are, and just turning to one another and bowing, acknowledging, like namaste, I see in you the light that is in me. I'm inspired in this moment to show you a piece of artwork that I have. This was in a store I was in the store with my daughter, and it was in a town that we lived in. I had just moved there. And when I saw this, it moved me to tears. And I was in the store again and had the same reaction. And so I asked her to buy it for me for Christmas, because she's always wondering what she can get. And this quote is by Crazy Horse of the Sioux people. He lived from 1840 to 1877. But that's really what I saw at the end of this light language, is that we were honoring the whole universe within each one of us, knowing that the other is just a reflection of the self, a beautiful divine reflection. So for those of you who hear it and it just sounds like sound and it feels like what the heck, if you feel inclined, you can listen to it anyway, because those who are able to feel are just showing others what's really there. I had, when I was married, my husband's aunt had environmental illness, and any products she couldn't use, I didn't use. Even though I may not react to them, I knew that they weren't healthy products. And so to me, she was showing me the way, showing me how to make the best choices. And it's kind of the same thing here. And I would invite you to listen to it a few times if you feel so inclined, because there is beautiful high frequency energy in this light language. A great delight to be before you all again, and I so appreciate all of you who are here and who follow my work and who let me know what it means to you, and just sending lots of love to everyone who is present, whoever hears this. And just a reminder that when you play the light language in your area, it's also permeating into your area, the sound and the frequency. So it's a great support to everyone in your area as well. Okay, lots of love. See you next time.